Oh, good Lord. So yeah, it started off sort of as a simple statement. How do we do this? How do we, it seems very easy. We have now what, 3,600 people in our fold, right? That's a lot of volunteers throughout the state of Texas. And if this is truly our mission, sort of increasing native plant use in the landscapes, conservation of native plants, whatever it may be, then 3,600 people is a lot. And we should be able to, in my opinion, do more than what we have done in the past. Part of that is sort of this evolution of going forward as an organization as we grow. We have aspirations to be on the heels of the Native Plant Society of California, right? 10,000 plus members. They do amazing work if anyone's followed their stuff. And they actually have a conference or a symposium coming up, I believe, next month. So how do we make that grow? We can't just keep doing the same things we've been doing over and over again. And people like me, who I think I've been fortunate in my colored career of a botanist, a landscapist, or a landscaper, seed collector, survey work, whatever you want to call it. So I've kind of had my fingers in many different avenues of employment when it comes to botany here in the state of Texas. So let's move on. Next one. How many plants are in the state of Texas, Max Bell?
Too many.
About 6,000. How many ecoregions? 12. We got it. We've got roughly about 450 rare plants, so just under 10%. Although I will say that there are plants that are listed as rare plants in the state of Texas, or that are not listed as rare plants that should be. We definitely have some other plants out there that are pretty rare. I think that they've just been overlooked and hopefully they'll get added. How many non-natives do we have? I tried as hard as I could to find a book on the non-native plants of Texas, and I realized it's because I haven't finished mine. So this is the one I came up with. Glad that's humorous. So we're a big state, 171 million acres, right? Second to who? Alaska. 95, let's just round that percent, is privately owned. So 77% of that is ag land. And what is ag land, Martin Simonton? Yeah. What do you think when you think of agriculture land? So yes, ranching, so cattle, sheep, goats, also all that ag land that's growing the cotton, the peppers, all the other stuff out there. So 132 million acres is privately owned, mostly ag land. So that's a pretty good number for the state of Texas. Our growth, and I just looked up these numbers, in 2021, we had 300,000 people move to the state of Texas. That is on top of basically the 30 million people we have here currently. And this is putting all these people moving here, the growth, the expansion, everything else is putting pressure on our natural areas. And so where are these people moving? Austin. Yeah. I was wondering if someone was going to pick up on that. Well, they're moving into that ag land, but what is ag land? It's not just cotton fields, it's our natural history. That's what that is. So when people think, when you're driving around out here, this isn't public land, this is owned by somebody. That's where they're moving to. So those beautiful landscapes that you see out here, maybe not out here, they're moving, but think of Kerrville, think of Central Texas, that urban sprawl that's going out. That's where they're moving. That used to be a cattle ranch, that used to be farmland. That's where they're moving. Those are the landscapes we're losing. And those landscapes have changed. So 2,500 acres per day is being used. 900,000 acres a year. I got 900,000 million, but that's probably not a real number. Half of that goes to low diversity or low impact, low diversity. And what is that? Housing. The other half is high density, that's urban. So 2,500 acres a day, that's a lot of land being used. It's a lot of people moving here. One thing that this did not account for was all the land that was being used on private land that wasn't being developed for residential or urban. So think about windmill farms, oil and gas pads, all that sort of stuff. So, and just an idea, I think I ran the numbers, a 10-foot wide easement as you expand the highway, just over a mile long is, I think 1.2 acres. So think about all those 2-lane highways that all of a sudden get developed for 20 miles. They get widened to a 4-lane with a left-hand turn lane. We're losing all that diversity that was along the side of those roads. So we're losing habitat, we're losing different, the systems that make up those habitats. All those populations are getting fragmented. We're losing the populations that were out there. We're losing those population genetics. So the populations that someone was talking about earlier, let's say there's a population down in South Texas versus a population of a certain species up in Central Texas. If you wipe out that South Texas population, those genetics are gone. And as Hovind said it once it's gone, it's gone. It's gone forever. And there ain't no getting that back. So, and overall, we're losing diversity. So this is a fairly new word for me, this synanthropic landscape. I used to call these areas when I would do surveys just feral woodlands because I didn't know what to call them. And so this sort of came out. And these are plants that are highly or are adapted to living amongst humans or with humans, especially in this disturbance. And if you can't see that, we have Chinaberry, we have Bacchus, which is a native plant, Vacheli, which is a native plant that's Weisach, sorghum, non-native, Lucena. In this area, it's non-native, it's native to South Texas, ambrosia, native, ligustrum, celtis, prosopis, synodon, morris. Any normal person that drove by that, you think, wow, that looks like a really nice, healthy system. But when you get in there, you see how wrecked it is. It's really not a healthy system. It's just highly disturbed plants just living close to us. And this isn't just happening. This is a small town of maybe 1,500 people where I surveyed for a pipeline, but drive between here and Fort Davis, just look on the side of the road. You'll see the same thing happening with grasses. So you have all these non-native grasses mixed in with native plants, and it's the same exact thing that's happening out here as the native or the invasive people said earlier. And someone else said this earlier, but there is no going back. Like we are not going to restore anything back to any sort of pristine thought that may have been there in the past. Like it has changed so much. And I'm saying this because, like I said, I've been lucky enough or unlucky enough to work throughout the state on various jobs. I've surveyed Big Bend National Park. I've done pipeline work through East Texas, through, what was the name of that? Patton Village, if anybody knows where that is. Not a very great place to be working, but sometimes it pays the bills. Collected plants for landscape use. I do landscape. So when I see these things, like I can tell that we're having some issues out there, but we can make it better. Here's an example how landscapes has changed. This is Blackland Prairie in Hayes County. Does that look Blackland Prairie-ish? Highly overgrazed. I believe it was KB Homes that bought this property. It may have been another, some other organization, but apparently about 15, 20 years ago, they bought this and they sat on it and they leased it out to cattle. They did that and they kept waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting until the infrastructure caught up with them. They got the cattle off. They developed this into a high density, and they call it workforce housing. Anybody know what that is? That's the housing for the people that can't afford to live in the city where they work. And when I asked the guy, because I didn't know what workforce housing was either, and I asked him, what is that? He looked at me and he was actually embarrassed when he told me this. And he was like, oh, well, the landscapers and the construction workers can't afford to live in Austin anymore, so we have to build houses out here for them. So very low, shoddy kind of houses, quick, in and out, that sort of thing. The mesquite, I put up a quote, and that was one of the things that I was told by a landowner. It's like, mesquite's always been here. It's been here ever since I've been here. It's native. That is not a native Blackland Prairie. Same thing's been said about junipers. Same thing's been said about Bermuda grass. Same thing's been said about various other species in the South Texas plains. And what that tells me is the people who you're dealing with, their perception of a healthy landscape is not, it's not based in reality. They're basing it on what they know. And so in a sense, all of our baselines are changing. So what really should be there has changed, but by that next generation, when they come on, since all the other plants are gone, this is all they know. So that's what they're working with. And as we move forward and forward, we're losing more and more with those baselines changing. Another example, anybody know what this is? Mumble, mumble, mumble. It is. Yeah, it's a SpaceX facility down at Boca Chica. Martin knows where it is because he helped me plant or collect plants for the Millennium Seed Bank on that property. Those are gone. If you've ever been down there, I'm not sure if Chris Best is still here, but that whole highway stretch that goes to Boca Chica, it's been widened. It's been overdeveloped on the sides. Caliche been brought in. Several rare plants. Those genetics are just gone. Those populations are no longer there. Dan Hosage, who I brought up earlier, he's been telling me for a decade how the number of wildflowers, the number of pollinators, all the places he used to go and collect, they're gone or decreased so much that it's not worth him going out to collect anymore. One of the reasons why he probably got out of the game. Here's another one. Someone may have seen this on Facebook or Instagram. Anybody see anything wrong with this photo? You can say this just about any ecoregion now. It is one of the most endangered areas, endangered ecoregions in Texas or in North America. It is some crazy number, like less than 1% or 5% of our coastal wetlands from the Louisiana border down into Mexico is gone. And it's all been converted to ag land. And so we were out looking for, I was out looking for some rare plants, some rare aquatics, when Casey and I were playing tag team down in the coastal Bend area. And I came across this and it blew my mind to see water lilies growing adjacent to and with prickly pear, and then right behind that is mesquite. And it's just an indication of really bad land management and just the practices that we have when we think that every bit of land has to make some sort of dollar for us, when maybe it's just best to leave it alone for the wildlife. So that's part of the outlook we've got to change. Here's another one. Someone might have seen this. This is earlier this year when I was doing a survey outside of Alice. Generally old rangeland, grazing area. And I walked into this place and it just felt unreal. It was unnerving being in there because the diversity was so low. Just a handful of woody trees and this grass. And we're going to show you a little video. And it's a little choppy, but I think you can get the idea. So that tall stuff is the guinea grass that Chris Best was talking about earlier. The ground cover, mostly Bermuda and or the buffalo grass. I mean, there was nothing alive in this place. No birds, nothing. Handful of green stuff, but it was pretty creepy to walk through that. Just to give you an idea, easily 7, 8 feet tall up those trees. So that was that plant he was talking about, that guinea grass that was more cold tolerant. Could you imagine if it was even more cold tolerant? So extinctions, who's going to get this joke? Kim, read the top line. 7 of 9. Oh, good Lord. I worked so hard for that one. Right. Extinctions are happening in our own backyard. So this is a list of 9 species, 7 of which are presumed extinct. Thank goodness we found the tardifolia, and someone may have found the Dahlia sabinalensis, recently, but it has not been confirmed. Here in the United States, extinction plants are kind of hard to deal with or really track because all the people that showed up on the East Coast, they weren't really recording all the plants until we started expanding west. So it looks like there's a lot more extinctions in Western Texas or in the Western US. And by the way, we're not number 1, we're number 2. California is ahead of us, so we can catch up if we want. California has a lot more. I think they're up in the 20s. Florida would be next. Like I said, 2 of these have one of them definitely recently been found. The other one, maybe. And I wanted to point this out. This information is not just stuff I made up. There's a guy named Wesley Knapp that I worked with on the Quercus tardifolia work. He allowed me to use his data about the extinctions and everything that's going on. It's been published, so this isn't just stuff that I Googled on the internet. But if you look up his name, Wes Knapp and et al., and they'll bring it up. So, nice photo of what? Aristolochia, got a caterpillar, all's good in the world, right? Anybody reading? So the background extinction rate, they currently, and granted this is worldwide, minimum 350 times normal is what our extinctions are right now for plants. That's just for plants. So we're losing a lot. I will say.
Sorry to interrupt you. I wanted y'all to know we're going to leave and come right back, but if you want tea or water, this is your last chance. Thank you all so much. You were very gracious.
That's a good break. But I will say a lot of those are happening on islands. So highly, highly endemic species, but they are happening in our own backyard as well. And that's something we really need to be paying attention to and be aware of. And this is essentially, you know, as we look at our landscape practices and how they typically happen or have been happening in the past, and you still see this today. I mean, I saw it last week. Basically bulldoze everything. Wait, we're going to leave a mesquite tree just in case. Then we're going to put in some other stuff. Who's a fan of the Texas lilac? Yeah, I mean, we can just get that started with Texas A&M and the Superstar program or whatever it's called, Texas Star. Non-natives are being sold as natives. They're being promoted as natives. We have cultivars of our native plants that research is now coming out saying that those cultivars are not providing enough nectar. They're not providing all the food source that we need for the pollinators. But yet we're still going to buy them. We're still going to go through that. We have natives that are being sold. Question, is this a native plant to Texas? Would you buy this plant as a native plant? Anyone? I may have 30 or 40 years ago thinking that it's a Texas live oak, right? What is a Texas live oak? Anyone? Quercus virginiana, there's the map. Yes, it's native to Texas. It spreads all the way over to Florida. The vast majority, my understanding, of our genetics are coming out of either Louisiana or Florida. That might be great if you're on the Louisiana border over there in Houston. Yeah, that's close enough. But if you're selling that thing over here in Central Texas, and the vast majority of the people have no clue that when they hear live oak, you know, they're being sold something from the Gulf Coast and not something from Central Texas. Who's a fan of Salvia greggii? You gotta know by now that I'm gonna get somebody. So there you go. What are these things popping up? Cultivars. These are the ones I just found. There's a lot. So these are the cultivars or hybrids with other species are being sold as Salvia greggii. So just about 30. Here are our native salvias. Which ones of these are being sold in the nursery trade? Well, we got a couple. The Mealy blue sage, I see. I also see it being sold as cultivar. Salvia pensteminoides, hard to find in the nursery trade, but there's a few people out there growing it. However, they're growing it for one population, and the genetics on that are pretty low, from my understanding. Salvia romeriana, occasionally I see my dog's name after him. But that's it. The crazy thing is, there are more cultivars of Salvia greggii in Texas than we have species of salvia. So if we're talking about like really getting plant diversity out, quit messing around with cultivars. You know, like who cares if you can find something that has like salmon on the bottom and red on the top, and that's going to be something else. In 5 years, you're going to be buying something totally different. Buy one of these other ones. Yeah, hot pink. So back to the remove, replace, repeat. Which house do you want to live in? All right. So large image, Quercus virginiana, probably from Louisiana. In the back of cultivar Tacoma stands. I don't know what the rest of that stuff is. Repeat that 1,000 times in this neighborhood, and that's what you're looking at. The grass is Bermuda grass. On the tags of the Quercus virginiana that I saw at Home Depot and Lowe's, right there, keep away from pollinators. You know, so what are we doing here? I don't know. The next one, that was on Asclepius. I'm sure you're aware of that. And anyone wants to move into the White House? Anyone? Fake grass, fake plants. The only live plants I saw were some invasive species of sedges and Bermuda grass coming up through the cracks, which you know they're going out and spraying with herbicide. All right, list of my favorite variegated plants. There we go. Needed a break. So back to this housing development. So this is about a mile away from that other place I showed you with the little plant coming out, little oak. So in my experience with working with municipalities that are looking to rehabilitate, revegetate, whatever you want to call it, their natural areas, many places now are looking eco-regionally, and they're looking at not just native plants. There's like, we want our native plants to come within 100 miles or 150 miles. Not only do we want them to be native to that area, we want the provenance to come that close. And they're getting more and more and more strict. So that project I was working on earlier this year, we had to have plants from the Davis Mountains or Jeff Davis County, Reeves County, this Chihuahuan Desert area. It was so hard to find plants that were native to this area. I mean, I looked and looked and looked and looked. It was super difficult. So there is a need of that coming out, and we need to be collecting more. So how do we help each other out? I might be a bit of an anomaly. I think we as a nonprofit, or I as a working for a nonprofit, should be helping out the for-profit industry, because everyone that I know that's in the plant trade, none of them are millionaires. We all struggle, right? We're doing this because it's coming from our heart. We're doing this because it's sort of the right thing to do. So Martin Simonton, I don't know how long we worked together. We've collected all over the state of Texas. Yeah. Hovind Riley, agaves, gracillipes. How many do you have growing now? Too many, few thousand. Patty Manning, where's she? Back there. Numerous species we've collected all throughout the Trans-Pecos, and I try to bring stuff in whenever I can. Sol Ross, Karen Little, and then of course Medina Gardens down there. So these are just a handful. I've given the Dan Ho stage as well, but trying to provide this plant material. So a part of it is being selfish because I can have access to that later. But really, we need to look beyond, or I need to look beyond that. It's like I'd love it to go to Home Depot and see not just 3 native species, but maybe 15. That'd be great. So my thought, and this is sort of going back to my time at the Wildflower Center, and I think that they sort of got a little awry at one point, but continue that seed collection program that we had that was sort of based on, or we should base this sort of on the Millennium Seed Bank project, but instead of collecting that one species or that one collection per species, we're collecting across its range, and we are providing that seed to these local growers. Target those plants that are uncommon in the trade. Who grows Telia trifoliata? Who's a grower here? Anybody? So 100+ people here. Martin's the only one. Nobody in their backyard? Yeah. Yeah. So there's only a handful of people that are growing it. This is something that's so widespread throughout Texas. It's a great pollinator plant. I had swallowtails laying eggs on my plant 3 days ago, but I hardly find it in the nursery trade. A few other places. What would be really fantastic is if we as an organization get away from looking at everything chapter by chapter, we start to establish working together regionally. And whether that's working with somebody like Martin Simonton or another grower, but we establish regional nurseries, greenhouses, you know, communities or educational centers where we can bring people to us more so. And I'm not saying that we need to be making the money on this. And trust me, Bill, I do not. We need to just be providing this material, providing this information, and giving it to the people that, like Martin or all these other retail or wholesale nurseries, that are going to get that out to the public. Because if we're just selling the plants between us, are we really making a difference? You know, we have to get it out to the people that don't know. So collaborating with other NGOs, local organizations, private landowners, a big deal. 95% of land is privately owned. Working with those private landowners. I brought this up with people at Sabot, some of the landowners there. It's like, how can I help you? It's like, we need access to your land. Well, we're not sure if that's going to be possible, you know, and it's like, well, then why are you even here? Quite honestly, it doesn't make any sense. If you're here to help our plants, just give us access to some land. That's all we're asking for. We just need seed to grow that stuff. At San Antonio, we have established a Texas Seed Bank collection program. It's brand new. We will be doing that. So I'm sure we'll be looking for some volunteers. Who's heard of FANN? I know I did not spell that wrong. FANN. I may have mentioned this to Kim. Florida Association of Native Nurseries, Native Plant Nurseries. So this had come up with Adam Black when he was here. How about establishing with NIPSOT at the head, the Texas Association of Native Plant Nurseries, where we are working together and we have all of us, all 3,600 of us, and bringing in more and more people to start this collection program, to start providing the seed to people so they can grow it and get it out to the nurseries. Lastly, there is a garden tour tomorrow. Martin went there today. What'd you think? No, this was taken 1.5 years ago. It is at the corner of East Avenue A and North 2nd Street. I'll be there at 10 o'clock. Martin helped out with part of this a while back, and then the owners did a large expansion. I wasn't sure if they'd be open for it, but she said, yeah, come on by. So I'll be there tomorrow between 10 and noon, if you really want to go. And then also, any other questions? Nope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.